In this week's line breakdown at Thunder Valley, we're going to talk about Jett and Deegan and their incredible technique on the motorcycle, along with some honorable mentions. If I'm focusing on Jett, you can see him coming down this downhill. This is the famous 180-degree corner there at Lakewood. Watch his brother. He is going to hit this embankment, and it's going to pivot him off. But did you see how hard that was as far as an impact? Here, watch that again. Bam. And then watch his brother. His brother's not actually going to touch it. It might have his rear wheel scrape the tip of it. Boom. Very smooth, but he just drifts that in as like a Tokyo-style back-end slide. Barely hits it. Front wheel is not smacking off of it. And there's just less friction there. And he's going to keep the power on the ground and be able to just slide that motorcycle around. Thunder Valley was a track where you could get away with a lot of sheer drifting just because it wasn't as deep as it normally is. There wasn't as many lines. Normally in a corner like this is a very deep section where there is 47 different lines to choose from. Continuing to look at Jett, this is an incredibly difficult section right across the start. I talked about in my track analysis video that there is probably going to be some pretty big rollers here, and a lot of guys have a really hard time staying on top of them. But watch Hunter and Jett and what they're able to do. They are going to wheelie into the first two, bounce off of it to land as almost a double. Then they're going to seat bounce and triple the middle section and double into the corner. They were the only riders I saw do that. It was incredibly smooth, incredibly technical, and this is part of the reason as to why I believe Hunter is definitely going to win more motos and overalls this year, and with his consistency, he probably is the guy that Jett should be the most worried about. Not Sexton, who's the closest to him in speed, but his brother because of the consistency. Here, and this is Hunter. Watch him as he wheelies into this. Barely gets over it and is going to bounce. It's almost like a wheel tap, but he's using both wheels. And he's going to land on the downside and then be able to triple that next section and double in. Very smooth. If we move on to one of the notable mentions is Justin Cooper. This guy led both motos for almost 30 minutes. He proved to himself that he can beat these SOBs, and he's doing it consistently. He is a solid third-place contender, and if any of the other guys make mistakes, he is going to capitalize on it. Watch as he comes into this top portion of the track where you're going to pivot into a 180 and go downhill. Look at his technique where he's going to set up, and you saw him get from sitting down to pop up. He's pushing on the foot pegs and he's leaning forward so that he can stand up. And then now he squats down to get a nice preload by pushing back on the bike. And notice how he goes from knees pushed down to knees extended. That's where he's creating the lift. And in this next corner, the right-hander, watch Cooper as he jumps into this rut and he doesn't stick his foot out. That entire foot was being dragged right there. And these riders, because of their positioning on the foot pegs, they're able to keep from tearing their ACLs and jacking up their knees, because typically previously guys would put a lot of weight on their heels and they would kind of stick their toes outward. Well, if you get caught in ruts, what's that going to do? You've got leverage to bend your ankle, and it could break your ankle, and it's going to hurt your knees. You know, there's lots of things in the knees, from cartilage to ACL, MCL, LCL, all sorts of stuff that get jacked up, and it's a pretty common injury. So if you're a rider out there that has had an injury like that, it could have been caused by having your leg get dragged off. But these riders stay with their toes pointed in, so it's much harder for them to get ripped off. And watch him as he comes into this sucker, sits down, foot is just being squeezed inside the rut, and he's out. And he finally sticks that leg out for the next little exit rut to pivot off of. if you're looking to consume more content, make sure you check out The Vet Show. It's Coach Robb Beam's new podcast where he has unique individuals on every month, and he talks about work-life balance, nutrition, training as an adult, how to focus on racing with work. So make sure you check that out. The link is in the description down below. This is something that I want to slow down so that you guys can see. Look at him coming up the start. Do you see his positioning on the foot pegs? His toes are pointed in. He's in the attack position. You can see he's got a little bit gap between his thumb and the handlebars, so where his pointer fingers are pointed in, and that is going to relieve pressure. You're not going to get as many blisters on your thumbs here, and that's just going to help him keep his elbows up. But along with pointing his toes in there, he's forcing pressure on the frame with his knees, and that's going to ironically relieve pressure from his arms because he's going to hold onto the motorcycle with his knees. And this is back to what I was talking about Cooper, where if your toes are pointed outward, they could get caught. In this case, they cannot because they're somewhat guarded by the brake lever and the shift lever, even though the shift lever does fold back. So notice him. And then as he's coming up to this top of the hill, did you see him? So he's not even at the top of the hill yet, okay? And he's going to jump back onto his toes. And do you see how now his heels are almost down? He's driving down. So like when you go to do a deep squat in the gym, that's why you have lifting shoes that have heels on them. It's so that you can put more pressure on your heels. And this is just for stability and power. This is a perfect example on how to ride a motorcycle and where to put your feet on the pegs. And he's not using the brakes anymore. He's now just somewhat accelerating at the top of the hill. He is riding right there on the balls of his feet. And if we watch him come down the next hill, well, he's sitting down, and now he's just going to lean forward, and he's going to trail brake, which in my terminology is just dragging the rear brake. He is leaning on it, and then he's going to accelerate with a little bit of the brake. You can tell that he is using that as a foot peg. Perfect example on proper technique on riding a motorcycle. In here, I'm just going to preview this and talk about it as it goes in real time. This is after Deegan fell down and he was just hell-bent to get back around, and you can just see the confidence. This is after 30 minutes of hard racing, trying to get around Tom. You can tell how comfortable he is on the bike by taking different lines that he wasn't taking previously. There he goes, outside in. Now he's going to pivot to try to get underneath Tom, and it slows him down by coming up the inside. Then he's going to try to come to the inside of Tom, take a different line, and notice how he jumps into this rut. He is standing up, almost gets the pass there, is followed by hauling butt on the outside, gets on the gas early, is jumping to the outside, taking a line that he usually takes, but he is just moving around the motorcycle here, tries to square up, making sure that the opportunity is open in case Tom makes a mistake, and Tom left the door open right here where Vial should have seen the pass coming. But just the sheer aggressiveness by Deegan is something to admire in the sport. And he is a dude that has placed himself at the elite status of not just an amateur and a social media phenom, but also as an elite rider in the series. It would be awesome to see him actually do MX of Nations, and I really hope that he will be on the 250 side for there. But as always, make sure you like and subscribe. Got the new show tomorrow, and keep it WFO. Ba-ra-da-da-da-da-da.